And I think knowing that it is possible. We've done it. To be honest, the product piece, that's the easy part. Yeah, the whole social media, the marketing, the imposter syndrome, all the things that come with running your own business, that's hard. But the product piece doesn't have to be. And
No, it
so I'm
doesn't.
hoping we can help simplify that.
Do you have a brilliant product idea but don't know where to start to get it made? Or are you looking to level up your product but afraid to take it overseas?
If so, you're in the right place. Hi, I'm Jackie.
And I'm Erin, and we are
The Sourcing Gals,
your trusted guides to everything you need to know about sourcing, manufacturing, and scaling your product overseas.
We know how hard it can be to juggle the ins and outs of product development, but don't worry, we've got your back.
So grab a cup of coffee, get comfy, and let's dive into how you can grow your business,
make more money,
and turn your products into profit. Welcome to
The Sourcing Gals. Now let's get started. High five.
Hi.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of The Sourcing Gals. We are so excited to be here. And actually, this is kind of crazy. I was thinking about this, Erin. A year ago today, we were in this house with a group of fantastic women crafting our vision boards for 2024. And I remember specifically saying that podcast, I wanted to dip my toe in the water, but I wasn't going to put it on my actual vision board for 2024. But 2025, it was going to come on strong. And Here we are in 2025. This wasn't even an idea last year when we were talking together. I mean, I know you've been kind of down the podcast route before in a couple other ways, but for me, it was literally just throwing it out in the universe, knowing that somehow it'll come back in the most authentic way. And oh my gosh, we're here doing it. And I'm so excited.
You're right. I was dabbling, but it took us getting together to come full force.
Well, I'm so excited to be here. Today's episode is a Fitch path friendship forged between a moose and a maniac. I'm going to leave that one right there. Pin it. We'll come back to it and give a little more explanation of what that could mean. But let's first start out with, Erin, when did your love for product development start?
For me, I've always loved product, but it started super young. It started with a need more so. I didn't grow up wealthy, probably like lower middle class. And I made a lot of the things that I saw that I wanted or that I didn't have access to. We had a fashion bug, a Maurice's, and a Walmart. Those are the kinds of places. And we weren't far from Columbus. I could go down to City Center for people who remember. I would go to the store and find things that I liked and I would make them. I learned in 4-H how to sew with a pattern. And for prom, I made my prom dress.
That's impressive.
Yes.
That's some intense sewing.
Intense sewing. This was the early 2000s. It was pink snake print.
I want to see a pic of that later.
I do have one. My hair was pulled back in a little twist with like butterfly clips.
Obvi.
Yes. But so, always making clothes, making dioramas of rooms with wallpaper samples and fabric samples. And so it was out of need. It was never something that I was like dying to just like delve into how things are made. That came later. But I think a lot of good things come from a need. I always had a really analytical and logical mind. I went to school, started out as a math major and ended up in pre-med or biology. But this creative streak in me was always there. Even through college, I was studying chemistry and biology on one side. And on the other side, I was making and selling T-shirts for my sorority sisters and stuff. And that, creative love took me through high school, through college. I hung a chandelier in my dorm room because it was too boring for me. And so on one hand, I'm spending time in these labs, and the other hand, I'm creating. And after college, I kind of floundered with that dichotomy. There isn't a whole lot. You don't know about the jobs that are available to somebody who has a logical mind and a creative mind. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? In the medical field, they don't smile about you being creative with your job. You're supposed to follow the book. So I didn't do that. I went in, I was a chemist for a while, and then it was my cousin, Angela, who really saw that duality in how I thought. And she was a merchant at Abercrombie and said, you need to look into merchandising.
Thanks, Angela.
Yes, thank you. And I got into it from there.
Amazing.
Tell me about you. What landed you in the corporate retail space?
So it's funny. I always had a love for products growing up as well. My mom called me the bag lady. I always had an accessory on me, lots of jewelry. I'm talking like little kid, like always had an obsession with playing dress up, also had this kind of hustler entrepreneur bug from quite a young age. I remember getting certified for babysitting in 4th grade because I wanted to start making money, and that was a great way to do it. And then I opened up a bank account and would watch my interest grow. I thought it was so cool. And then to treat myself, I would go down to my local Hallmark and buy myself a stuffed animal, because that's what you do as a 4th grader. Little did I know at the time that I was buying OG Beanie Babies before they were a thing.
I just thought they were cute.
I just thought they were cute. They were cute. They had personality. So come 5th grade, I had a sizable investment in them. They were $4.99, and so I would every couple weeks I go treat myself to a $4.99. I actually called them Tie Guys because I didn't know they were called Beanie Babies at the time. I remember in 5th grade walking down our downtown area. Along the train tracks, there was a baseball card and coin collector. He would buy and sell and trade. And this was the beginning of eBay as well. So I saw a sign in the window that said Beanie Babies Wanted. And the entrepreneur in me thought, there is a need and I have a solution. I have inventory to sell. And I was not emotionally connected to those stuffed animals. I was able to see the dollar signs versus the emotional attachment. So I went and talked to him, and he's like, I'm looking to sell Beanie Babies. These are the ones I'm looking for. And I went home and happened to have every single one of them. Wow. And so I walked in with 7 Beanie Babies, and I walked out of there with a $5,000 check. This man had to, I'm sure he remembers it, handing a $5,000 check to a 10-year-old at the time.
Probably thought, what's she going to do with this money?
Well, funny enough, I actually saved that money in my bank until I studied abroad, and I used it to go skydiving in the Alps and skiing in Switzerland. And so great investment, well worth it. But that was the beginning of my little bug for, oh my goodness, okay, I can see problems, find solutions, and I can make money out of it and have it create something better and solve problems. Like, it just was this like light bulb moment. So then my whole life I was crafting in my basement, sewing, making clothes, like you said, working with patterns, and just always had ideas. I'd bring it to fruition and then be like, okay, time for the next idea. So it was always just hobbies until college. So I studied abroad in Florence, Italy. And I went from being a super overscheduled college student in so many committees, sororities, dance teams, singing classes, to basically only having class once or twice a day and then nothing else to do. Obviously, I'm in Florence, Italy, so
you're going to find something
I'm going to find something to do. I spent my days wandering the streets, meeting with the leather vendors, and just getting so inspired. It was a really good reminder to myself of like slowing down can be such a good thing to me. I am a go, go, go person, but in those slower moments are opportunities where I can really get inspired and get that creativity juices flowing. So I had this idea for a belt. Imagine a belt with no buckle, a hole at each end, and then you would lace a ribbon through it. So super preppy. That was the look at the time. And now it's like bows are back, which I'm so happy about. But I just had this idea burning, and I was like, I'm here in the Mecca of leather. Like, there's got to be someone that can help me make it. So I went down the stairs from my apartment, and there was a shoe cobbler there with all the things that I needed. So I showed him a picture, which turns out is kind of like creating your own tech pack. I drew a picture, I had measurements, and he made it for me. And then I found this amazing trim store in Florence and bought the most beautiful satin ribbons.
I can only imagine.
And cut them. I started wearing my product, right? As you should do. Test the product out, wear the product. And so I started testing it and wearing it, and students were stopping me and asking me for them. So then I started manufacturing belts while I studied abroad. And I came home to campus, and people kept asking about them. And so then I learned how to countersource, which was basically taking what I had made in Florence and find a way to make it here in the US. And thanks to Google, I found a wonderful leather vendor down in Texas who was willing to work with a 17-year-old that was launching a product, and ended up selling in boutiques in Chicago, boutiques in Columbus. And so I vividly remember it was junior year. I still had no idea what I really wanted to do. I thought, could I do this full time? Maybe, but it was still very scary to me to try to do something full time right out of college. And my friend, Abby, came up to me and said, there's this thing called merchandising. And I was like, I've never heard that word. What are you talking about? She's like, yeah, you basically get to run your own business, but in a large corporation. By the way, did you know that there is many retailers here in Columbus, Ohio, which I'm from Chicago. So I had no idea that Abercrombie and Fitch, Express, The Limited, Justice, it kept going on and on.
Big Lots, CSW.
So many here. And so she's like, by the way, Abercrombie's just down the street. She had been an intern there every summer. So she's like, you should try to get an internship. Lo and behold, A&F was coming to Denison's campus looking for store managers. And so I walked up to poor Joe Losine. If you could have seen this guy's face. I'm in an Elle Woods pink power suit.
I
Like,
can envision that.
literally, I
see
bought
you
it
in
from
that.
H&M. It was this cute bell skirt. I had my black fling back pointy toe pumps on with bows on the toes. I mean, literally, she was my icon at the time. But somehow I just convinced him, I'm a really good convincer, to like give me an opportunity to have an interview for your corporate position. I wanted a corporate internship. I didn't want to work in the stores. He took a chance and I had an interview and it turned into an internship. And so my junior year, I was interning at Abercrombie. And the minute I stepped on that campus, I was like, this is it. This is what I'm meant to do. And then the rest is history.
There was a vibe. I totally forgot. I blacked out. I used to work in stores in college. I worked at a kid's store. And I remember them telling you that if you were really cute, you would have to work for the front of the store by the doors. They put me to the front of the doors when I started and then realized that a bunch of the other people didn't know how to use the cash register because they were hiring for looks. And I was a chemistry student at the time. So I got not only moved to the cash register, but I had to like do the end of day and stuff and all of the finances in the back. Anyway, what a caveat. Sorry. I was like, oh, I did work in stores. I forgot about that.
So if you haven't picked up on it yet, this friendship, as I said,
yes,
forged between a moose and a maniac was that we both worked for Abercrombie and Fitch corporate retail during the crazy Mike Jeffrey heydays.
Oh, crazy years. We'll have plenty of episodes to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, it could literally be its own podcast series about the shit that went down at that place.
But yes, so we met there.
We both were in merchandising and I just grew up always thinking, I've heard the word buyer.
Yeah.
So I heard of buyers and
With Rachel Green.
Yes, Rachel Green. Friends. She was a buyer. And also Ulta Beauty was in Chicago. That was the only connection I knew of retail. And I was just told that their buying already made things. It was very numbers and financial driven. And I knew, while I do love numbers and I do love analytics, I love creative too. So it never made me push further to look into it, which is just funny in hindsight. But so merchandising, right? Let's talk about merchandising because you might have heard this word. Again, I threw out the word buyer. So Abercrombie had a very, very unique positioning on merchandising that I believe
too,
set us up for the most successful future. And I will say, to be honest, any merchant that I know today that worked with us during those years, again, wildly successful because of all of the things that they taught us, all of the jobs and roles and autonomy that we were given to manage $100 million businesses as 23-year-old post-grads is like mind-blowing.
Well, I worked in accessories, so my business wasn't that. But yeah, so merchandising was really, we described it, we were taught, and we, I think, still describe it like the hub of a wheel, where the merchants in the middle and the cross-functional teams are the spokes. Each thing that needs to be done day to day, design, planning, allocation, sourcing, product development, all of those things are the support to the merchant who brings them all together. They're the ones that connects all the dots for all of those spokes and makes the wheel go, essentially. And I feel like maybe some of the cross-functional teams didn't love that analogy, but I think it really gave merchants the overview to own the business.
Yeah. I mean, end of the day, you made the call, right? Good, bad, and different. So when you're up there in front of Mike Jeffries in that selling meeting and that shirt's not selling, or, you know, you're there for the accolades and you're there for the like total teardown.
If you're the one, you know, who chose the wrong Navy.
Yes. Oh, Lord, hell. Oh, not the wrong Navy.
It was up to you. And it was your business that you ran. It gave you, like you said, the autonomy and the responsibility and the mindset.
Yeah.
The mindset's important in a position like that. And as a 23-year-old, that's big.
And I think what was also unique about merchandising at Abercrombie was this layer of product development.
Yes.
Right? So the sourcing teams were really there to help from a super macro level.
Yeah.
They're looking at factories and the capacities, meaning like how many units can they produce on a monthly basis? Do we need to shift things around? So they were at this eagle eye view, I would say, of product development in a sense. But the merchant, we were literally the ones emailing the factories every day.
Every day.
So you would work all day long to get all the answers to send over to China, or I was working with Cambodia at the time, and I was working with same time zone as Peru. So, right, you have all these different levers and different emails that you're having to manage in relationships. But the amazing part was you were learning to build relationships with these factories. They were not just factories. They were not just vendors. They were partners. They were there to help you through when all of a sudden I told the factory to start printing on a Thursday night, and Friday morning Mike wakes up in terror that we printed the wrong thing and he changed his mind and I had to stop the print, literally stop the printing presses. It's because I had a true relationship with these factories beyond just this surface level that made them bend over backwards. They wanted to see me succeed. They wanted to see my business succeed. So I think not only learning the ins and outs of truly vendor communication, the tactical piece of it, but the relationship piece was just so important. And I loved that company put such a focus on that, especially for us merchants.
But a lot of places, the merchandising role was really just the numbers and the market research and a true partner to the planning, the merchandise planning, and an Abercrombie layering on that product development is what gave us the ability to see how things were made.
Yes.
To get into the factories.
Yeah.
To understand all the ins and outs of how product comes to be.
Let's talk about that, because I think I know you might have won for the most trips ever taken by a merchant. That's the company.
That's a random side story, but we were that was right after the financial crisis, the housing crisis, and we were on like a travel freeze, and we didn't have the ability to train people overseas, so they could only send one person. And since I already knew, they kept sending me. One year I went to China 8 times.
That's insane.
8 times. But we both have traveled a lot. You went to Peru.
Yes, Peru, Bangladesh, Peru a lot. I mean, it was a little bit of a home away from home for a while, but let's talk about your first factory visit, or one of those first moments when you're like, oh, this is cool. So what was like a highlight of one of those trips maybe in your early years?
Yeah, I started out working mostly in footwear, totes, belts, accessories. And my first visit to a flip-flop factory was really mind-opening. How they made the actual rubber that went into the machines that output the rubber pieces and parts.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a Play-Doh machine. You know, when you were little and you put the Play-Doh and then you like cranked it down and it like shot out the tube.
Yeah.
So similar to that, they did that on these huge presses, like 2 Play-Doh plates, but they were like 12 feet by 12 feet, and they had that moose imprint in them to make the outsole, the tread of the flip-flops. And it was heated to, some ungodly heat temperature, to where the people running the machines were wearing like shorts and like loincloths and stuff. So it was so hot. It was 100 degrees in China. And I just remember thinking, wow, this is so much bigger than I thought. This is such a bigger operation. And even down to the color of the flip-flops, the heat changed the color. So getting the color right when it was in its Play-Doh form, so that after it was pressed, it was actually the right ending color. And then it matched the little top part, all of those pieces and parts, how they fit together. That was the moment where I was like, this is A, really cool.
Yep.
B, a huge deal. C, shocking that anything ends up working.
Yeah. Seeing how it's made in real life, you realize when someone says, oh, this moose antler looks a little off, and we, open up a new mold, right?
Those molds cost $100,000.
And now you're seeing it like, oh, I get it. A 12-foot metal plate that has to be custom made. Like, okay, maybe 100 grand's not that far off.
I remember thinking, this is asinine. Like, why does this cost so much? And then I went to the factory and I was like, oh, this is why that costs so much.
Yeah.
Not only the investment of those decisions we were making and how they actually panned out in real life, but how just different things can be, and how the smallest little tweak can make this part different than this part, and bringing all those things together.
Well,
but I'm sure that's similar to
yeah. I was going to say, when I had one of my first trips to Peru, I was doing graphic t-shirts. So we were in these beautiful state-of-the-art screen print factories, but then also getting taken down to the knitting. I saw raw cotton, and then I saw the machine that took the raw cotton and made it into yarn. And I saw the knitting mills where they're taking this yarn and turning it into fabric, and you follow it along to where it's being laid out and your patterns are being cut and sewn. And by the way, a pattern being cut overseas at that time was where they would stack 50 layers of fabric on top of each other, put these metal weights at certain points, and someone literally has a saw and is by hand sawing your t-shirts out. And so you think, oh my goodness, when that t-shirt is a half inch here, a half inch there, I get why. There was only a man sitting on top of 50 layers of fabric, hand cutting my sleeve and my right. And then it has to go to the sewing lines where 25 people touch it to have it be made. But I'll never forget going in. We did a lot of dye effects. It had
Specs,
to
yeah.
look old, right?
It was
The shirt,
2000s.
the shirt had to look like it had been literally pulled out of the trash in a sense.
Mhm.
So we were doing a lot of things called potassium sprays, which made it give it that bleached, washed out look. I walk into my print shop and I'm seeing t-shirts being screen printed. And then a separate room was this man in a hazmat suit.
Oh, dear.
With a spray gun, inflatable mannequins, and my shirts, after they were printed, put on these inflatable mannequins. He is literally hand spraying this shirt. I mean, my heart hurt for many reasons, right? One is like, oh my gosh, there was a human in a hazmat suit spraying these t-shirts that I'm selling, right? So that was, that's the hard part sometimes about sourcing is seeing the reality of what's happening to get our product made. But then it was also the light bulb of like, oh, this is why when I'm asking them, not too dark, not too light, why is this shirt sprayed more here versus there? It's like, it's physically one gentleman doing it. And guess what? He probably has 30 minutes, an hour that he's allowed to do it. And then the next person comes in and it's a whole nother person doing this hand done treatment. So again, seeing how it is actually being made just opens you up so much to understand some limitations of why things are the way they are, right? And it might also open up opportunities of ways to streamline. Maybe I could be more clear or say, hey, we need to make sure that when we're spraying, it's going from top left to right to bottom, right?
Like just the way you communicate changes as soon as you see it being done in person.
Yes. So I think those factory visits were very eye-opening. I still totally geek out whenever I get to go to a factory, especially when it's new products. So I saw socks for the first time being made, and I had never seen that before. I just stared at it and took so many videos. And, the factory owner was like, can I help you? I'm like, no, I just want to watch it. It was like a hen laying an egg, just started knitting and then popped out this sock at the end of it. I just, so intriguing. So again, I'm a nerd for it. I love it. But yeah, so those were cutting our digs at A&F, And then I think it's important to know too, within that journey, right? Like I spent 5 years there. You were there for 9 years, right? Quite a while. But then from there, we both kind of springboarded
off to
other places that, to me, I learned different skill sets, different assets. So why don't you talk about, after your 9-year journey, kind of where did you go next?
Yeah. So like you said, Abercrombie, you really cut your teeth on building this business and being in charge of every facet. From there, I went into product development specifically and figuring out how things are made, because that was the part that I loved most about Abercrombie. I went to work for Bubble Bar after that, where they were going from buying off people's lines to designing and producing their own product. And I did a lot of work to help grow that capability. How do we expand upon this idea? How do we make our own acrylic beads? How do we make a custom line? I was pivotal in their custom. And from there to even my own home goods line, which was a learning process. Home goods are huge, really expensive to ship, and take a lot of space to store. It was a big learning experience. And then my own jewelry line. And now I work for a company which is a vendor. So we provide jewelry to other big box brands, but I don't work for the big box brand. I still design and manufacture the product to sell to the big box brand.
And you having that experience of being on the other side is a huge value add for your company you're at now, right? That you understand, you've been on the other side of it, you know what each brand is looking for, what those buyers or merchants are needing, right?
And part of that's just being in all those factories, but having to go back and report to Mike Jeffries at the end of that. I know when I'm providing the buyer at, let's say, Kohl's with information, I know what they have to go back and tell their CEO, but I'm also over here at the factory. So that love for how products made really is the underlying factor of it all. I mean, you mentioned travel. I've been to China like 36 times, Korea like 5 or 6, Japan a few times, India 3 or 4 times, Italy, working in leather goods. And all the different factories continue to propel my love for making things, which turned into helping people with ideas make things. People come to me every day saying, can you help me? And so I'm in the position now where, working for a vendor, supplying to big box, but also doing what I can to start my own businesses. I have a jewelry line, help other women start their businesses. It's taken on a life of its own. And I do think, for as many downfalls as Mike Jeffries had, it was a great place to get started, to give me the toolkit to do everything we're doing now.
Definitely. When I think about my merchandising journey, because I stayed more on the merchandising track per se than product development. However, now it's full circle. When I left Abercrombie, going to the Limited, the women's retailer, to do accessories, it actually was product development heavy. We actually were sourcing and doing the assorting, picking the products, doing the analytics. So for me, it was a very easy segue into the jewelry side. But then as my time progressed at the Limited, I ended up getting moved to the apparel side where I wasn't writing the vendor emails. I wasn't owning that communication. And it was very challenging for me at first. It was really hard to not just dig in and be like, let me just take that email. I'll just pick up the phone and call them. Like, it was definitely a different shift in my role. And then again, did the corporate hopping around a couple different companies. After 13, 14 years being on the corporate side, I kept looking at my boss saying, I just don't know if I want to be her. That entrepreneurial bug in me, which I will say as a merchant, it is a very entrepreneurial job in general, right? Like you really are owning your own business in this big corporation. But at the end of the day, it's really not your business. There's still levels and layers above you.
You're making money for someone else.
Yes. And they're making the final decision at the end of the day, right? You might make the day-to-day, but when it really counts, the big decisions still are out of your hands. So I was kind of feeling that more. And so I had a unique opportunity to try something different. I was approached by a privately owned manufacturing company that focuses on accessories and apparel. It was a merchandising product development team of 2 that I would be overseeing.
Big difference.
Yeah, but the CEO saw a lot of opportunity and he saw what I was bringing to the table. He could tell I had this entrepreneurial spirit. I had worked in every category of the business at this point, tops, bottoms, accessories, you name it. He's like, I think this business is poised for growth if you want to come in and try something different. So I took a risk and I jumped over to the vendor side of the business. So now, 7 years later, I have a team of 10. It's an 8-figure design and manufacturing business.
And you're part owner.
And I'm a part owner. So speaking of entrepreneur, I joined as an employee. And once I started managing the growth, I said, I want more. Luckily, my now business partner saw that and came back and said, hey, if you want to part in this company, let's get really serious about it. So a mortgaged house later and a cash out of all of our Apple stock and a lot of risk and bet on myself. But I will say the best bet you can make is on yourself, especially when you believe that you can do it. And I knew that I could do it. And so now it's paying dividends and I get to help other people launch products and scale their business at a big scale, right? So our company works with the Abercrombies, with the Bath and Body Works. So we're working with companies that have the scale, and it just inspired me to say, like, I'm doing this for other people. Why can't I do it for myself? And so that entrepreneur in me kind of layered on to my existing job of helping manage and oversee this company. And I launched my own product-based business as well last year. So now I have this dichotomy of, day to day, I'm working on my own business with, started with 0 followers and nothing. And then I have clients that are selling hundreds of millions of dollars and we're a small piece of that, right?
Yes.
But what that's allowed me to do is understand both sides of it. And so also people come to my company asking for help and advice. But unfortunately, sometimes if they are a startup or if they're at that lower scale, that doesn't fit our mold,
or
right?
if they just have an idea and
or
they
if they're
need
really
guidance.
starting, like pre-launch, to your point, our factories aren't built that way. Our factories are built for scale. Our team is built for scale. And so that's kind of the birth of this podcast. And this conversation is really, how do we help fill that gap? How do we help women and entrepreneurs that are either starting with an idea or maybe they're selling on Etsy and doing it all themselves and they're buying everything domestically at wholesale and thinking, if I could only customize this, my product could be that much better. We are here to fill in those gaps and start being able to help answer those questions and guide people through this product development process. I think as we look forward in this podcast, we're so excited to give some education, give some tactical advice about how you can just take this idea or something you might even be doing right now and scale it.
Yes.
And make it into a profitable business that doesn't have to take all your time, right? Like that's the great thing with manufacturing and sourcing and outsourcing is that someone else can be doing some of that work so that you can focus on your business.
Yes. So we both came from these backgrounds in corporate retail and then launching our own businesses, working on the vendor side, traveling a ton, learning about manufacturing. And within all of this, it's really become, I say, my party trick that everybody comes to me and says, I have an idea. I need help making the idea. And it's taken on a life of its own. We realized there was this huge gap in the market where normal people who didn't grow up in corporate retail,
Yep.
have good, new, amazing ideas every single day. But what we know is usually held pretty secretive. It's like finding a factory, sourcing things. It's got this veil over it. And so our goal is to pull that up, to really give people that insight that they need and some really tactile steps to get your idea off the ground. And not only to get your idea off the ground, if you don't have an idea, I think we're still going to have a lot of good things to talk about. We both love woo-woo stuff.
Woo.
Even being a millennial woman in business. We're going to talk about fashion. We're going to talk about trends. We're going to talk about balancing it all. But it's all underlined with the idea of building a product brand.
And I think knowing that it is possible. We've done it. To be honest, the product piece, that's the easy part. The whole social media, the marketing, the imposter syndrome, all the things that come with running your own business, that's hard. But the product piece doesn't have to be. And so I'm hoping we can help simplify that and let that not be what gives you anxiety about your business, right? Like the product piece, we're going to set you up with guardrails, what to expect and the right questions to ask. It might be fun to take some calls sometime, right? Like have people call in and say like, where are you struggling with your manufacturing? Like, let's talk through this real time. Let's talk through this live and figure it out.
Problem solve.
Because we love to solve a good problem. I mean, that's what we do all day. That's basically what product development and manufacturing is, solving problems all day long. And not that everything will always go smoothly, but
it never does.
There is a solution. There is always a solution. You might have to get a little creative with it.
I'm not saying it never does. It goes smoothly sometimes. But I think that when I say lifting up the veil, filling in the gaps, a lot of times if people don't have the background, they don't know those gaps, they might see them as a problem and we'll come along and be like, actually, that's easily solvable this way. So I think knowing what you don't know and knowing which thing is not a problem, will just help you propel forward. And I think that's what we're here to do. So this is our first episode. We have so many things to talk to you all about, and we're really excited.
Before we close this episode out, why don't we share one of our wackier Abercrombie stories, just to end on a really fun note.
Oh, geez, the wacky Abercrombie story.
I can start if you want to think on yours.
I think I have mine.
Okay, go for it.
So when I started in October of 2005, we were getting in all of the winter wear, scarves, hats, mittens, everything like that. And for whatever reason, it was late. Everything was always late. But it wasn't getting set on time. And I had honestly nothing to do with that. I had just started. And I remember being in a meeting and them just blaming it on me and saying, like, I ruined Christmas. And Mike would say, winter, where are you? Instead of winter wear, because it was missing. And I just got to thinking, what in the world did I sign myself up for? But that's one. And then when I got a little bit more experience and I was actually on Mike's Rolodex, I got a call that was from Mike's admin.
Marianne. Love Marianne. Bless that woman.
Bless that woman.
Oh my gosh.
Where Mike had been in Saint-Tropez and seen a sandal he liked and written a note to Marianne and faxed it to her.
Oh, yes.
And then she got the note and then read me the note from him.
Yep.
And I just was like, what is this? Fully telephone. And the note was that we should be doing sandals. And we had been telling Mike for years that we should be getting into sandals and not doing flip-flops, but he had to see them on someone in Saint-Tropez for it to click.
Yep.
And I mean, that's not even, there are some crazy, wacky ones, but those are the ones that came top to mind.
That's crazy. I remember I started off in the girls' graphic t-shirt department. And so there's only so many sayings. This is when all of the really like racy graphic t-shirt sayings were on the news and pushing the envelope, right? I remember Nicole Richie, that was like the big show at the time, her and Paris Hilton show.
Yes.
And so I remember we were brainstorming and coming up with slogans, and I still have the t-shirt in my save bin. It's like, if I were a Richie girl, and like just playing with all the, like, we literally, there was like merchants come up with sayings and then design would just make them, print them and just go. It was wild. And there was no legal team reviewing anything. But I remember at one point we had this big emblazoned moose on a kid's t-shirt. And so we dabbled in different ink colors and then went to metallics. And then we had a glitter moose for holiday, which Mike approved it in some prior meeting. And then we were in a sales review and it was up on the wall. And I was going through my selling. And he just kept staring at it. You know, when he
Fixates on it,
and he fixates and gets that finger point going.
He doesn't hear anything past that.
No. And then I'm looking at him like, oh gosh, he hates the glitter mousse. And he looks at me and goes, are you single-handedly trying to destroy the brand? And I was like, 23 years old. And in my head thinking, but wait, he approved this and it's our #1 seller, but he hates it. So I look at my designer and she's like, take it off the wall. I got up there and I grabbed it and threw it out of the way.
I remember doing that, grabbing things off the wall and just
like chucking it. So yeah, that was a fun one. I realized, okay, it doesn't matter whatever he says in one meeting. If he says something different in the next, you gotta just go with it.
You gotta
so
roll with it.
I almost single-handedly destroyed the brand with my glitter mousse t-shirt.
Well, if he had seen you in your All Woods power suit, then
he would have been like, this girl does not understand us.
I did wear a black suit to my interview.
Okay, well, that wasn't the only one.
No,
Dressed out of
but it's given us a lot of character, a lot of trial by fire.
Yeah. And resiliency, right? This retail landscape is tough too.
And I think that's what we can help teach too, is that one way of going about something isn't just the only way. There are 10 ways.
Yep.
And so knowing what the options are and being able to make educated decisions are going to be the cornerstone of building a product.
Well, I think we gave the listeners a lot to digest, probably a little more than we were expecting to, but thank you guys so much for listening. We are excited to come back at you with all things product related, business related. So we're going to wrap this one up, but thank you so much for all the 2 listeners we have right now. Hi, Ma.
Hi, Matt. Thank you for joining us. We will be here again for our 2nd episode next week.
You got it.
And we can't wait to have you back.
Thanks, guys. Have a great one.